Ladies and gentlemen, we have so much to cover today. We are talking about Seiya Suzuki and the issues the Cubs might have out in trying to find the right fielder to play, as well as so many other things as we prep for next season. And of course, as you see, I got one of the legends with me as a special guest. I got Crawly with me. We're going to have a good time. But first, we got to hit you with that intro. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Chicago Cubs Central, your number one spot for all things Chicago Cubs. I'm your host, Mike Jones. And guys, I have somebody for you today. If you don't know this gentleman, you are missing out. I'm talking about infinite Cubs knowledge, Cubs content creator, Cubs collector of memorabilia. Like I said, his literally, I love the fact that this sums him up. Some Cubs fans tweet it, the real ones live it. Guys, this man right here lives it. I got Crawly in the building with me, y'all. He has his own kingdom, Crawly's Kingdom. He also has, obviously, he's the host of the Fly the W podcast. You guys don't want to miss out on that. Shout out to everybody over there. And Crawly, thank you so much for joining in on today's episode of Chicago Cubs Central, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, Mike. I'm excited to be on here talking Cubs. I mean, we're now in single digits before we get to opening day. This is going to be my 26th straight Wrigley home opener. So,
oh my goodness,
I was there in 2020 when it was even shut down. We were on a rooftop for opening day against Milwaukee. So they're not going to keep me out, but my goal is to try to make 50 in my lifetime. But it is the time of year when we're ready to talk baseball. We're excited. But I do have to say, I feel like the World Baseball Classic whetted our appetite a little. It really got us fired up a lot earlier than normal.
Absolutely. And you know what? One thing that I noticed more than anything is just the presence of Chicago Cub players in the World Baseball Classic, and not just presence, but difference makers. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed, before he got injured, which we'll talk about, I thoroughly enjoyed watching Seiya Suzuki. I felt like there were multiple games where PCA was like literally the spark for Team USA, and which is what he does for the Cubs. And then, of course, we got to talk about that man, Daniel Palencia. I might have to do some apologizing this season for some things I might have said about Daniel Palencia in the past, because if he comes with the gas like he had in the World Baseball Classic, Crawly, I'm telling you, I'm going to have to apologize, because, I mean, he was phenomenal.
Well, here's the thing that, we try to talk to people about is that development is not linear. Guys are going to have up and down, and that's normal with a young ball player. People forget that Greg Maddux was struggling. Especially his second year in the league, he was sent down to AAA for being in Benito Santiago, but that was the whole thing, is that he hit him after Dawson took one from Eric Shaw, if you remember that, in '87. But the point of it is that guys are going to have their ups and downs and struggles. You look for certain things, and I think it's easy. We're fans. We dedicate hours and hours and hours to this team and to the game and everything. And sometimes it gets frustrating when you see a guy blow it, but sometimes when a guy has stuff and when a guy kind of doesn't. And again, I know people get mad every time. Oh, did you see what Luke Little did? Did you see what Porter Hodge did? Did you see what Palencia did? I mean, look at Palencia's numbers last year. He had a couple bumps in August and September, late August, early September. Mm-hmm. But before and after, and you look at the postseason, I know he had the one hiccup in Milwaukee, gave up a 3-run home run. But other than that, he was phenomenal. And so, you just don't become a Lee Smith overnight. You don't become just a Hall of Fame closer overnight. There's going to be bumps. There's going to be ups and downs. But, Daniel Palencia, I was talking to a friend of mine. It was about 3 years ago, 2022. I like to go to the minor league parks. And I went to go see the South Bend Cubs. They were in the Midwest Championship. And I had pictures, and I was looking at my phone after the series ended last night, the World Baseball Classic. And I'm looking, and there's Daniel Palencia, there's PCA, there's Owen Casey, there's BJ Murray. Those are 4 guys on that team alone that I saw 3 years ago. And 3 of those guys out of those 4 were real difference makers for, Owen for Canada and
Yep.
PCA, obviously, like you said, a spark plug. And then you take a look at what Danny did. Daniel has big game experience. It's the thing is in when you get to the majors, that jump between AAA and the major leagues has never been bigger than it is right now. And these guys will spit on pitches that would wipe guys out in the minors. And it's a lot tougher. They're going to figure you out. They're going to get tape on you. You're going to have people with massive, data analytics department finding your every weakness. And it's not as easy as it used to be, but I have a lot of, when they said, hey, we're going to go with Daniel Palencia as our closer, I said, all right, this guy has big game experience. And you saw him on the biggest stage right there in the World Baseball Classic. And he looked great.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that you talk about how everybody's progression is not linear. I think people expect that once you get that call up to the majors that you automatically need to immediately be like the guy or be a guy for your team. And it just doesn't always work out that way, especially when it comes to pitchers. I know a lot of people have been down on Matt Shaw. And like I said, with his issues and whatnot, and not having necessarily the pop that we thought he might bring to the club. But again, I think taking that same approach with Matt Shaw, because apparently we aren't trading him. We aren't getting rid of him. He's going to be a Chicago Cub. And again, I mean, he might outlast some of these other guys that may not get contracts here that are coming up due here soon. So I believe Matt Shaw will be around for the Chicago Cubs. But I love what you said about Daniel Palencia. And I love that he does have big game experience. And I've said this ever since. I love the way Craig used him last postseason, where instead of being in the closer spot, because we had Brad Keller, obviously he was the guy that came in 5th, 6th inning and like just threw gas, and he like completely shut he shut the Padres out. And like you said, he had that one hiccup against Milwaukee, but he looked fairly good in both series. And I feel like there's carryover from that. There's carryover from what you saw from him, had the faith the Cubs put in him towards the end of last season to be the closer, into what he brought in the postseason, into what you see in the World Baseball Classic, into what we're about to witness during this season. What are you expecting from him, Daniel Palencia, in general during this season?
I mean, the main thing that I take a look at, the next step for me with Palencia, we see that he has the tools. I mean, you just don't wake up, roll out of bed, and throw 100 miles per hour. I mean, he's got God-given talent. Okay.
Sure.
The main thing right now is as a closer, there's 2 things. Number one, things are going to happen. Maybe you're going to make a bad pitch. Maybe someone's going to make an error behind you. You have to be able to flush it. You got to be a goldfish. You just can't let that. And I feel like when Daniel runs into problems, sometimes those are kind of the things that, he starts to overthrow, and then his mechanics get a little bit out of whack. But that's part of the learning process. But, there's no doubt. I feel like the Cubs, do a really good job with bullpens and piecing it together and figuring it out on the fly. Craig always talks about outgetters, and when you talk about Palencia and his usage, sometimes they used him at some of the early big moments in those postseason games. Postseason is a lot different than regular season on how you handle your starting staff and your bullpen and all this stuff. So I think, that's going to give Daniel confidence. It's just, it's just learning on the job, and it's just really hard because if you fail, you do it in front of 40,000 and however many more people are listening and texting and tweeting and whatever they're all doing. And he just has to kind of stay focused, know that he has the stuff. I feel like this World Baseball Classic is going to just be another step in his confidence level. And, our goal this year is that the Cubs make it not just to the postseason, but deep in the postseason. And I feel like having this experience of that crazy crowd in Miami going nuts, pressure on him. I mean, you're looking at the whole country watching you of the Dominican Republic, all the people watching on the United States, and you're taking that ball in the 9th inning, and he had ice in his veins. I thought he did great. So I'm looking for more of the same. And the only thing I just tell people is just relax. And again, you're not going to have a perfect season. Mariano Rivera, would have hiccups. It happens. It's just normal. And just because he has a bad outing or two, or kind of goes through a rough stretch, like I said, I believe a lot in Daniel Palencia, and I think obviously by not getting a big league closer, the Cubs are saying they do too.
Absolutely. I think they started showing last year that they really were going to go with Danny. I know we talked in the offseason a lot about, the potential of the Cubs going out and getting a big league closer. A lot of people still believed that they needed to go sign a big league closer, but at the same time, you have somebody like Dane Palencia that is throwing 100, and if he can be in control of his emotions, if he can control his emotions, kind of what you were saying, Crawly, I think that's really the big takeaway for me too from Dane Palencia. Control your emotions, have ice in your veins, be able to slow things down to the point where you drown out that outside noise and you just throw. I mean, he has the stuff. He's gonna overpower a lot of hitters. Very few are gonna be able to catch up with him.
Right. Just get it near the plate, and because that's the thing. The hitters have got to load up early. They got to make a decision quick. Just get it near the plate. It can't be uncompetitive pitches. As long as he does that, he's going to be fine. And I think, like I said, when you take a look and you say, what are my concerns? That definitely isn't one of them. So I'm happy with Daniel, and I was happy with his performance. And for the people of Venezuela, you saw the emotion that they showed afterwards. And for Daniel, there's some great pictures out there, and hopefully, that's going to be some great memories for him.
Absolutely. All right. So before we jump off the Dane Palencia topic, I do want to ask you then, I like to play a game with my guests on here. Over, under. You taking the over or the under 30 saves this year for Danny?
I think 30 saves is about right. I'd go slightly over.
Okay.
I'll go 35. How about that?
35. Boom. I love it. That is a quality closer right there, folks. 35 big league saves for the boy. I think that's wonderful. If he can do that for us, we've had a successful season from the closer spot, and we have our closer for the future. Like I said, and go ahead.
And look at the bullpen too, because I feel like the bullpen is going to be a strength of this team.
Yes, very much so.
And I feel like, there's a lot of veterans on there that again, good mix of veterans and young guys. And I really feel that there's a lot of guys in the AAA that are going to be on that Iowa shuttle that are going to contribute as well. I know Porter struggled last season, and obviously he's injured. He didn't look that great in spring training, but guys like him, guys like Luke Little, like I feel like some of those guys are going to take that next step. Absolutely. And so, the thing is though, is that it's so packed up here right now on this team, on this Cubs team. You got to take advantage when you're given the opportunity. You can't come up from Iowa and Joe Madden, I just saw him actually this last weekend, talked to him. He was at the Chicago Sports Spectacular. He used to always love to put the young guys right in the fire right away. You are not going to get a lot of chances because there are a lot of guys knocking at the door, but that's a good problem to have.
And not to mention, I feel like Jed went out and got a lot of veteran pitchers that have experience this time around. Again, there are some reclamation projects in there, but there are some guys that, like I said, that also are great pitchers, just great outgetters. And he really supplied Craig and Tommy Hotovy with the tools to just get outs this year. Like instead of guys having designated positions, or you're the setup man, you're the closer, you're this, you're that. Obviously, we know Danny P will probably be the closer. We got a bunch of outgetters, guys that can come in and contribute any point of the game. And like you said, though, you look at your Ben Browns, you look at your Javier Assads, you look at your guys like that, your Colin Rays, guys like that are going to also be able to come in and still get outs too. And I have a question for you a little bit later on, another topic I want to ask you about your thoughts on about Ben Brown. But I just really feel like you said, the bullpen is going to be such a strength for the Cubs, but it's important for those guys like Luke Little and those guys, when they do get that call, if somebody goes down with injury, you have to come up here and maximize. You got to be able to find the strike zone. You got to be able to get outs. I think Luke Little has electric stuff. It's just he has trouble with his command. But I feel like if he can get that under control, he's going to be a dominant pitcher. I mean, look how tall and big he is, overpowering. And like I said, his strength and everything like that. I think he can absolutely do wonders up here in the majors. It's just finding that consistency.
Yep, that's the key, and Luke knows it, and it's again slowing down the heartbeat and putting the ball. Don't try to overthrow it. Trust in your stuff, and I feel like Luke has it. I'd love to see him break out this year. I'd love to see Porter have another. Again, I feel like Porter's another guy that gets overlooked, and there's just guys. There's a lot of guys, and so I saw Hobie Milder when I went out to Arizona, and I mean, my God, that stuff. I mean, like that funk that he throws. It is just.
Oof.
Yeah, it hurts me to even watch him throw. And when you go to Mesa, and I always go to the left field berm. I love the left field berm. I've as often I've gone to spring training games. I don't think I've ever sat in a seat for an entire game. I did once. Actually, that's a lie. I did once. Me and my buddy Steve, he's out in Arizona. Steve Sure, he goes to a million spring training games, but he lives out in Arizona. One time we walked in, right? It's Shohei Ohtani, not Shohei Ohtani. It's I wish it was Shota Imanaga's first start for the Cubs in Cactus League. And we walk in and we've had a couple of cocktails and we walk into Sloan Park. And then he's like, where are you going? And I just walked down the stairs and there was like 4 empty seats in the very first row behind home plate. And I said, look, man, I just, you know how it goes, Mike, content. Just give me 5 minutes here. We'll get kicked out and I'll just take a couple pictures and then I'll put it on the socials. We sat there for all 9 innings. So there we were.
Oh man, there you go. That's you know what that's called, Crawly? That's called living right. When that happens to you, you're living right.
Yeah, that was a seat upgrade, but usually I'm out in the berm. And so like when you're in the berm, you can kind of see the pitch. They're right there. They're literally like 15 feet in front of you. And I'm watching Hobie Milner and I'm just like looking at him. I'm just like, how does his elbow not snap in half? It's just got to be so distracting to the hitters. I'm excited because I always like the weird sidearm submariners. It's just a different look. And so it'll be fun to see.
Yeah, and like I said, the release point of his pitches and the timing, it totally messes up the timing for hitters. They're trying to catch his timing and everything like that. So out of the additions that Jed brought in, who do you think makes the biggest impact in that bullpen, addition wise?
I really, I watched Hobie Milner, Phil Madden, all the guys that they got, I think are going to contribute. I don't think there's going to be like a Hector Neris or any of those kind of situations this time around. I feel just in general, I kind of feel you never know. You're always going to have the hiccups. The one that I think kind of everybody's got a star by is Hunter Harvey.
Yeah.
So when you think about Hunter Harvey, you mentioned reclamation projects earlier. This is a guy that has stuff, just can't stay healthy. Just can't stay healthy. But if you remember, like a few years ago, the Cubs were able to take Julian Merriweather with the same kind of issues, right? Like he was a guy that had great stuff, blue chip prospect, threw hard, was always injured, and the Cubs were able to do something with that. And so is Hunter Harvey kind of this year's Julian Merriweather, just to give your listeners some context of a guy that I don't know if he'll always, how long he'll stay healthy, but is he a guy that maybe you even get one season out of that he just all of a sudden just all the promises realized, he stays healthy, his stuff is sick. Does he become somebody that, really makes a huge difference in the bullpen? So that's the guy I'm going to really kind of be keeping an eye on. With Madden, obviously he's kind of to me like one of those with Phil, just kind of one of those anchor kind of guys.
Yeah.
And when you talk about Hobie Milner, like we were talking about, just kind of that other funk that you're going to see. So those are the 3 guys I think that people are going to kind of look at that are on the roster right now. And then, other guys that we talked about, potentially coming out of the bullpen, whether it's Ray Assad, Ben Brown, or some of the other guys. I know Jordan Wicks is injured, but is he going to come up and do something? Luke, Gavin Hollowell, those are all guys that potentially could do stuff. And there may be guys that we're not even talking about that could make a difference. Ethan Roberts has had a great spring. If you take a look at Ethan Roberts' numbers, he's had a great spring. So, sometimes those names just kind of pop out of nowhere and really make a big difference. So, we'll see what happens.
And I think that's really Tommy Hodavy's calling card as the pitching coach, is simply being able to pluck guys out of obscurity and really tweak a couple of things, and then really they come in and they just look amazing. Like I said, so I'm curious to see what Hunter Harvey looks like, with the Chicago Cubs and how he can contribute this season. Like I said, Phil Maiden is somebody that I think everybody knows what he can bring to the table. Hobie Milner is a Craig Counsell guy, like I said. So he already knows. He has the utmost faith in him, like I said. So I'm excited to see what these guys bring to the table and what they're going to be able to do. Before we get off of pitching, I want to pose something to you. You're a spring training guy. you know what spring training means. I know a lot of people try to downplay spring training like, it doesn't mean much. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Our guy, Jameson Taillon, has looked awful. I mean, awful this spring training. If Jameson Taillon, I want to pose this question to you. If Jameson Taillon came into the season and he looked, he let's say his first couple starts, he just looks horrible. Could you see the Chicago Cubs making a switch to somebody that has looked phenomenal this spring training in Ben Brown?
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of it, is that the Cubs have actually a plethora of options if it doesn't work. Now, J-Mo is a veteran. He is he's a professional, and I've heard him say before he would pitch out of the bullpen. With a guy like J-Mo, you're going to give him a little bit of a leash, maybe, let's see what it looks like in 4 to 5 starts, as opposed to Arizona, which is moving games to night games because it's been so hot. And sometimes you do just see the ball fly out, and the air over there, the dry air does funky things. I mean, what's going to happen? I think, I'm looking at the calendar. Opening day is 47 degrees, drizzly with wind blowing in. I mean, I don't know. I'm J-Mo is one of those guys that is an innings eater, that you look at the back of the baseball card. Now, when you talk about does spring training mean something or not, it's different for every player. Are you somebody that's competing to be on one of those final spots on the roster? Are you a veteran or are you a rookie? Was there issues last season? We know that Shota's velocity was down. We know he was getting tagged for home runs. He's looked great. So there's certain things that you do look at, and for me, it's kind of a progression. The first couple weeks of spring training, I'm not worried about results. Guys are working on things. Guys are, you're not sitting here and you're not doing a major scouting report on all the hitters, Basically, you're trying pitches. You're working on location. You're working on feel. And then the next time you come out, you make adjustments. Those are the type of things. Velocity slowly starts to ramp up. But by the time you get towards the end of spring training, we're kind of getting towards that end right now. That's where I'm starting to look at things. And this is where things should kind of start being cleaned up, right? You're not sitting here going like, well, I'm going to try to throw 25 curveballs to like at this point in time, like you're saying to yourself, okay, opening day, like, I don't know how many times we're going to see Edward Cabrera or Shota or Cade Horton left in spring training. A lot of times when you get to this end to get guys ready, they're going to do a lot of like backfield work. They're going to do simulated games, those type of things to get them ready. Again, I don't know what plans Tommy and Daniel Mosco and some of the pitching infrastructure, or I'm sorry, Tyler Zombro, what they have planned for those things. But I do feel like, at this point in time, you wonder what's going on with J-Mo. Velocity is down. He's been getting hit like a piñata. So I'm hoping that, he can turn it around. If not, I don't know. Ben Brown has been phenomenal. He worked all off season on a sinker.
And it's
last
good.
season. Yeah, it's a good sinker. And last season he was working on a changeup. And so now, he went from being a 2-pitch pitcher of a fastball and that knuckle curve to kind of having some other options. And he's looking really good. And he's a guy to me that, I know we kind of talked about before, some of the young guys, confidence is being confident, because sometimes I feel like he would lose his confidence in some of those starts if things didn't go right. And, sometimes a huge part of the game is in between the ears. It ain't your arm, it ain't your shoulder, it's in between your ears. And I feel for Ben Brown, another guy that I just see has stuff, but I think, the development is coming, and he's getting more pitches, and he's going to learn the league. And I feel that, he's really someone that's coming up here. Look at what Javier Assad has done. His velocity is up. He had a really good WBC like he did 3 years ago. And then Colin Ray, I mean, if you didn't have Colin Ray, I mean, that was huge last year. He was a huge different maker.
Absolutely.
And again, what are we really talking about here when we're talking about J-Mo? We're talking about the 5th starter spot. If you're taking a look how everything's lining up here, Boyd's going to get the opening start. You're going to see Cade Horton probably in game 2. You're going to see Shota in game 3. You're going to see Edward Cabrera in game 4. And then game 5 is Jameson Taillon. There are a lot of teams in the major league that would love to have Jameson Taillon as your number 5 starter. And we're not even talking about Justin Steele being back.
That's true. That's very true. That's a very good point. You think that Soto will get the start over Cabrera in the
You
order?
know, a lot of times they kind of mess around with the righty lefty type of thing.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's why you had it like that. Okay.
Yeah, and again, you know, what does it matter after the opening day starter who goes? You know what I mean? It's kind of like,
True.
you know, wherever you're going to throw this team right now reminds me a lot of the 2008 Cubs, who actually, you know, best record in baseball, blah blah blah.
Yep.
But the reason they were so good is they had a lot of good 2 and 3 starters, like all the way through, like 1 through 5. Those guys on that team could have been 2 or 3s on pretty much any team, but they lacked a number 1. And that's the question right now, right? So Matt Boyd, you did great. You had an all-star. You're a veteran. You get the ball on opening day. And they planned this out early in spring training. This is not something they decided last week. Okay.
Right.
And so is there someone that could step up and truly be an ace? Now, people are going to say Cade Horton. 100%. I could see that. People are going to say Edward Cabrera. Can he stay healthy? I don't know. But right now, does this team, who would this team, if this, you know, and again, we have a whole season to figure this out, but your game 1 starter for whatever, NLDS, NLCS, whatever, who are you giving the ball to? And that to me is the thing that I'm going to look most for in this season. Do the Cubs have an emerging number 1? With Cade Horton last year, they did treat him with kid gloves, and that was the right thing to do. Sure. He was on very strict pitch counts in that time. So this is the next step in the evolution of Cade. How long is he going to be able to go in a game? How many innings can he go? Can he be dominant? We saw him with, I think it was 10 strikeouts a couple nights ago. The fact that he knew he was on a pitch count forced him to kind of be in the zone, because the more guys you strike out, the more your pitch count starts racking up. But can he be a guy that throws more strikes? I don't know. Like I said, Cabrera has the stuff to be a number 1 starter if he stays healthy. That's a big if. Can Justin Steele come back and be someone that would be a number 1 starter? These are all questions that, you know, are going to play out once the season gets started. And that's why I'm excited, but it's that depth of pitching. Like I said, you know, most of these guys would be a 2 or 3 on any other team. And they might be guys, like you said, you know, Edward Cabrera being the 4th starter, maybe, you know what I mean?
That's a good 4th starter. Like I said, that's not a bad problem to have at all. I look at this and I say to myself, Jed went out. He tried. And in his interviews, he said it. I mean, there were a bunch of pitchers that he made contract offers to that would have been aces and would have been number 1 starters on this team that would have probably superseded Matthew Boyd. Didn't work out that way. They went other places, or they went back home, or they did whatever they wanted to do. So, but what the Cubs do have, they do have depth. So, like I said, you're looking at a team that has legit. So you look at Shota, you look at Cabrera, you look at Boyd, you look at Horton, you look at Tyone, you look at Brown, you look at Assad, you look at Ray. You have 8 guys on here on this team right now that are technically all starting pitchers. You know, that's a very good problem to have. You know, there is no shortage of depth of guys that can either come in and be innings eaters, guys that come in the middle of games, guys that can start games. I love the makeup of our pitching staff this year, because it's almost like we saw where we lacked last year, where down the stretch, Shota was injured and then couldn't get his stuff together, you know, and Matthew Boyd, we rode him hard as long as we could until, like I said, he couldn't go any longer. You know, we lost Horton. So they went out, they got young studs, they went out and got proven vets. And there's a mix of guys that will be in AAA and guys that will be on the bullpen that can absolutely help this squad one way or another. I love what Jed did. I thought he did a phenomenal job on that side. I don't, however, necessarily love Jed's makeup of our bench and what we're looking at as far as, you know, what if some of our guys get injured? Now, again, we do have outfielders that can come in absolutely and help out potentially, but we don't have guy with a pop like Seiya Suzuki. So I want to switch over to the Seiya topic, and I want to ask your thoughts on this injury to Seiya Suzuki. A lot of people are saying he's there, he's walking, he's limping a little bit, but like I said, it might not be super serious, might not need surgery, might just need a couple weeks. He might miss opening day until he can get back and run. I know Craig came out in an interview and said that he can do baseball activities. He's just kind of limited in them. But I feel like the Cubs kind of screwed themselves over a little bit with not going out and getting that one more bat that had some serious pop, just in case something like this happened with Seiya Suzuki, you know?
Yeah, it was, you look at the free agent market and you ask yourself, okay, let's be honest, some of the cost of these guys were really, really high. I know people never really want to hear that, but it is. As far as the pop, that's the biggest concern for me is, are they going to have enough power? With Seiya Suzuki's injury, obviously that hurts. And, people, it's funny, you know how it is on social media, where today I was like, Matt Shaw made an error in the first inning. And I'm just like, please get better, Seiya. And everyone's like, oh, you hate Matt Shaw. No, I think Matt Shaw's an awesome infielder. I don't think he's an awesome outfielder. And I think that Matt Shaw has been one of the best guys on offense this spring. You take a look, he has, you look at his numbers. He's made all sorts of adjustments. He's hitting the ball hard. But again, that's really hard to be like, hey, go play the outfield. Like it's not that simple. And not only that, right field at Wrigley is a pain in the ass. Don't pretend like anyone can play that. Remember that Seiya Suzuki was considered a Gold Glover in Japan. Remember that Kyle Tucker was a Gold Glover in Houston. And when you saw both of them in right field at Wrigley, you're like, these guys were that great defensively. And that's because we have had some good right fielders over time. Obviously everyone knows Jason Hayward's struggle with the bat, but he was a great defensive outfielder. When you talk about guys like, Andre Dawson was a guy I grew up watching in right field, stuff like that. But it's hard. There's wind, there's sun, there's brick walls. There's not a lot of foul ground. It's the eye line. There's problems with the lights and some of the new lights. It's not. If you told me Matt Shaw's going to play right field for the Brewers, I'd be like, okay, I could see that. Dome Stadium, A lot easier. Okay, I think
added
it's hard.
walls, no elements unless they open up the roof. Yeah,
right. If they open the roof, it's going to be sunny and beautiful out, and it's going to be fine, right?
Sure.
And so I'm just saying, this team is built on pitching and run prevention.
Yeah.
Okay. And so for me, just to sit there and think you can throw a guy like Matt Shaw out there, if you're telling me third base, shortstop, second base, there's a lot of options that you can kind of play around with infielders. Sure. Do I really want to see Matt Shaw in outfield? No. And if the Cubs are winning, I want to see a replacement right away towards the end of the game after the sixth inning, just because, God, I think it was a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago. I remember they tried this with Miles Mastrobuoni, who played for Team Italy in the World Baseball Classic. And he botched a play that cost Justin Steele and a win and all this stuff. And God, I want to say it was maybe 2 years ago, 24, I want to say. But it's just like, no, man, it's not that easy. And then everyone's going to get mad when he makes a bad mistake. It's just put players into a position where they're going to succeed. Putting him at right field or first base, this is the tough situation that the Cubs find themselves in right now, is that Matt Shaw is emergent. He's not going to learn anything from going to AAA and getting everyday at bats. So it's that's another big thing I'm going to be watching with the Cubs. How many at bats and where can you find them for Matt Shaw? And Moises Ballesteros, Mo Baller. He's looked great, and I'd love to see him DH. And I think you'll probably see some sort of platoon between Shaw and Moises. Moises getting the right-handed pitchers, and Matt Shaw getting more of the left-handed bats. But I feel like Seiya in right field right now is kind of the best thing for the Cubs, and so hopefully. Like I said, I don't think he's going to be out much more than mid-April. I think he'll probably start the year in Iowa, just get his at-bats in, and then, hopefully be up with the team as soon as possible. But that's, the thing about Seiya, can he put together a complete season? Because, and same thing with PCA, but PCA is a younger guy, right? Where Seiya is a veteran, and Seiya is playing for his next contract. And so for me, when I thought that Seiya Suzuki is one of the biggest first half snubs for the All-Star game. I thought Seiya Suzuki had an all-star first half and he got snubbed.
Yeah.
That being said, the second half wasn't great until he got into the postseason, like towards the end of September. But when you're a veteran and they got you hitting 3 or 4, you can't go for a 2-3 month slump. That can't happen. If you look at Seiya's second half numbers, not great. So it's
right.
He has to put a complete season together. I hope that he does. I really like him as a player. And so that's just one of the things that I'm going to be looking for from, both Seiya and Pete. But with Pete, again, young player, you're going to give him a little bit more leash. They're going to have more struggles. With Seiya, he's a veteran on his last year of his contract. He's got to be more is going to be expected of him with Kyle Tucker gone. And with Alex Bregman, like, he's not the guy that's going to, give you 30 home runs. You know what I mean? He's going to give you phenomenal at bats. He's going to hit doubles. He's going to get on base. He's going to get that OBP going. But, this team, if you remember last year, had a ton of guys hitting 20 and 30 home runs. And if you can do that again this year, I think you're going to be in good shape.
Absolutely. I'm looking at Dansby Swanson, who knows that they need more out of him offensively. He has put it on himself to bring more offensively. He already knows what he is defensively, but he wants to revert back to what he was in Atlanta. I don't know if he can reverse the clock and do that. I am looking for more out of Dansby. Look, Ian Happ is who Ian Happ is at this point. I mean, like I said, he's good when he's good. He's bad, really bad when he's bad. And I mean, it just is what it is. But like you said, he can't be hitting in the 2-3 hole and being that bad. Like, you can't do that. I look for PCA to put a lot of the pressure on himself to pick up the slack home run wise this year. I do think he's going to try to do that. I'm also looking at Seiya and exactly what you said. I said on this show plenty of times. It is of the utmost importance for Seiya Suzuki to have a great season in order to get another deal. Not to mention, I think with the challenge system, Seiya is going to have a good season this year. He's going to get a lot more walks. And I think, like I said, that pitchers aren't going to be able to fool the umps like they have in the past, But would you like to see him stop taking those first strikes and start swinging at those a little bit more? What are your thoughts on that?
Seiya is a professional hitter, and I think the Cubs in general are going to be a team as a whole that are going to benefit massively from the ABS. And I'm very curious to see how Craig Counsell allows certain hitters this. Like, if it's PCA, dude, you're not challenging. Keep your hand off your helmet. But Dansby Swanson, don't want to see it. But if you're talking about Michael Busch, if you're talking about Ian Happ, if you're talking about Seiya Suzuki and Alex Bregman, those 4 guys, you tap your helmet whenever you feel like it. And I think, hopefully, I feel like for whatever reason, the Seiya strike zone was a real thing. He got screwed so many times. I think a lot more than most players, and I have no idea why. And so I'm hopeful that that will help him, keep him more positive, and he'll have a good full season. As far as Dansby's concerned, I have seen what he's done offensively in the spring, and it's been really impressive. The thing about Dansby is he never really was a big offensive threat. It was what his glove brought to you. Now, that last year in Atlanta, he slashed 277, 329, 447. You'll take that any day of the week. But there's only been one other
Sundays.
Right. There's only been one time in his career that he hit that, and that was in 2020 in the shortened season. Okay.
Gotcha.
Most of the time he's around a 240, 250 hitter, which is what he's been in Chicago. He is the ultimate streaky player. Hot when he's hot, ice cold when he's ice cold, no in between. Right. And so can he take his offensive game to the next level? It's looked good in the spring. We'll see what happens. It just really, I need Dansby to be the Gold Glove Dansby. He has to, if you're not going to contribute offensively, then his value is really in the defense. And so I need to see him be a little bit better defensively this year than he was last year. That's kind of where I'm looking at with Dansby, to expect him to kind of, the home runs were where they were in his best years. You remember in Atlanta where he was, prior to the Cubs, he didn't have to be the first, second, third, fourth best hitter on the team. You had Ronald Acuna, you had Freddie Freeman, you had all these guys on this team. So whenever you got the big hit from Dansby, well, that was the cherry on the ice cream sundae right there. You know, that icing on the cake. You didn't need it. You know, so this Cubs team isn't as talented as some of those Braves. Ozzie Albies, another guy, you know. They're not as talented, but if you can sit there and be a huge difference maker on the field, then you can overlook some of the offensive deficiencies you're going to have with Dansby.
Kind of like what he did in that Padres series where he basically single-handedly carried the Cubs to victory. The Padres could not get a hit off of that man. I mean, everything that came his way, like it was ridiculous, like how much he changed that series around. Crawly,
you remember that was what Mike Schilt brought up in the post-game conference after they lost.
Absolutely.
Obviously Bush did what he did. Seiya did what he did. But the first name that I remember that Mike Schilt brought up was Dansby and the difference that he made just with his glove. And that you're 100% right on that. That's what he has to be, that guy. Guy. He was not, whether you agree with it or not, he wasn't a Gold Glove finalist. If he's not a Gold Glove finalist, that's an issue.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. That is a great way to put that. I want to have some fun with you before I let you go. So you are a collectible type of guy. I want to know, what is the rarest Cubs collectible that you have in your collection right now?
I got a lot of cool things. It's hard. I don't know if you can see it right here. I don't want to knock the mic out, but if you take a look over to this direction right here, that guitar is a Washburn guitar that was a giveaway at Wrigley Field in 2007. So only 100 of those were made. Back in 2007, they would have scratch offs. You'd come in, you get a scratch off, you'd take your coin out and scratch. And if you won, you got one of those guitars. So, I mean, that is a beautiful Washburn guitar. And for your podcast listeners, it plays beautifully, but I never play it. I just like, I do play guitar, but I just basically strum it with my fingers, no pick, but it's got the Wrigley Ivy and the brick wall and the 400 there. That's something that I really love. I have, there was only 16 of these made. It's the Andre Dawson blank check story written out by Andre. And anyone that's an autograph collector, I mean, the guys nowadays, their autographs are crap. Like Kyle Schwarber's autograph, crap. PCA's autograph, crap. Andre Dawson is like a calligrapher, man. And so he wrote the whole blank check story out, and Fanatics made it. I think they made like 15, 16 of them. So I love that piece. Probably my most prized piece of my entire collection. I was chosen in 2017 to be one of 20 Cub fans to present the Cubs with their World Series ring. And so I was on the field opening day 2017 along with 19 other ring bearers, and I got to give the ring to Miguel Montero. Okay. And so I have a lot of friends from a group called Club 400, which is a charitable organization raising money, Cub fans helping Cub fans. Sure. And we would always have a Christmas party. And one Christmas party, they called me up and there's this box. I said, what the hell's in this box? And it was Miguel Montero's game used jersey from that ring ceremony game.
Wow.
The guys were able to find it. There's a lot of game used collectors and stuff like that. And they were able to find it and they got it for me, and I got it signed by Miguel Montero. So I actually have my jersey from that day signed by Miguel, his jersey from that day, game used. And it's in a beautiful, beautiful frame that I have. My framer, Catch 22, Jason Ketchick, does a phenomenal job. He came up with this whole concept of everything. So I got the pictures, the stubs, everything's inlaid. I got two pieces that are just like maybe like 5 feet by 7 feet across on a wall. That album. And then another rare piece of collectibles I have. My old middle school PE teacher, I don't know what the odds of this are, but he was the guy, Tom Bunjowski. He was the guy that brought the K signs out to Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout game.
Really?
He had 16 of those K signs. I ended up later on coming into meeting one of his friends and his son, Tom passed away prematurely, but his son, Jake, is on social media. I've always, when Jake and I reconnected and talked, his dad was a big influence in my family as far as, me as a teacher. And then later on, my brother, he got my brother into wrestling. My brother became a state wrestler because of him. And he gave me one of the K signs from that day from Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout game. So that's a really cool piece that I feel like is, there's not a lot of those out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Hall of Fame has one. The Cubs have one. The family has some, and I have one. So it's very, very, very rare that you'll find one of those.
That is insane. Like the amount of collectible stuff like that you have. Probably the rarest thing I have, and I saw as you were panning over, you have it too. I think it's that Maker's Mark Cubs bottle that you have.
So those right there, there's 4 Cubs Maker Marks bottle. That's the dual one with the wax on it.
Yep.
And then for the last 3 years, they've been putting out these special bottles. That's a Game 7 Jim Beam. That was the batch was made on the day that the Cubs won the World Series. Effin' Vodka used to do some Cubs logos on those guys there. And so it's one last collectible. This is a funny story here is that, my wife has to put up with all my nonsense. And basically the basic rule is no memorabilia except for the Cubs cave here, And so in my clubhouse here. And so what ends up happening though, is that, people will call me sometimes and be like, hey man, I got this thing. You interested? Da, 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 da. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. This guy says, man, you're not going to believe this, Crawly. There's a 7-foot bobblehead that these people are going to throw out. They owned a warehouse, and they basically were selling half the warehouse. So they had to get rid of a bunch of shit. And they had the 7-foot Cubs bobblehead that was, so the South Side, the Cell, Guaranteed Rate, whatever they call that place, hosted the All-Star Game in 2003. And Foco, which is a company that makes bobbleheads and all this stuff, they made 30 life-size bobbleheads, 7 feet tall bobbleheads, so bigger than life-size. And they put them all over downtown Chicago, and people would take pictures with them. This is before cell phones and all that stuff. Like take actually pictures with them. And it was in this warehouse. The Cubs one was in this warehouse since 2003. So it had to, like 22, 23 years is sitting in there. And my buddy's like, you have 24 hours to find a truck and get down here and pick this thing up. So I found a truck. I drive down to work. And all of a sudden I take a look, and this thing is massive. It's a massive bobblehead. It's about 7.5 feet tall, 8 feet tall, roughly. And I get a truck. We put it in the truck. I have to, I have the tail of the truck down, and I'm driving down 90, going about 45 miles per hour with this giant bobblehead off the back of the truck that I'm trying to pray to God doesn't fall out the back. I got it secured pretty good. And then I bring it home, and now it's getting late at night, and there's a base on it, a big wide base on it. So I couldn't get it down the cave. I said, all right, I'm done tonight. I'm exhausted. I'm just going to leave it in the living room until I get the toolbox out and all that stuff. And so my wife comes in, there's this giant 8-foot clown looking Cub bobblehead. And, I'm working, I got all those things going on. So I couldn't get it to the basement right away. So the kids would come down the stairs, or someone would come in the front door and just be scared by this giant 8-foot Cubs bobblehead. But that's a one of one. So that's kind of a cool piece. So I like that one.
Yeah, too. Absolutely. And it's great. It's great that you brought that up, because just recently when they did the schedule release, I think it was, or something like that. They
promo schedule.
Put out, they when they did the promo schedule, they put out all the different Cubs. I think it was the Cubs like statues like around Chicago and things like that, and people were going around taking pictures of them. So I think that's really cool that you have even something even more rare than that. You got the bobblehead from 2003 All-Star Game. That is amazing, man.
8 foot. Yeah. The bobblehead collect. I don't know. I just autograph show. So right here, but you can take a look. The bobbleheads are all back there. So
goodness
it's every bobblehead. That one in the middle is every bobblehead that's ever been released at Wrigley. So it's bobbleheads are probably some of my favorite things. So that's, if the Cubs are listening, if you're going to get rid of one of those Sammy or Ben Zobrist bobbleheads, you know where I'm at, Cubs. You can at me.
So, listen, I will say this. We haven't even scratched the surface, Crawly. I got to have you back again to talk more Cubs. Like I said, I will frequent you, like I said, and get your thoughts on different things. But we got to have you back on the show, man. Like I said, it's been truly an honor. You are literally you are the epitome of what a Cubs fan is supposed to be, man. I'm telling you, from the collectibles to the everything that you've done history wise with the Chicago Cubs. You are not going to find, folks, many Chicago Cub fans that are as into the Cubs as Crawly is, and just his history and knowledge of the game. I didn't even get to ask you like history questions. I'm like I said, I got another special guest coming on Sunday, who's a guy who swears up and down he knows all the Cubs history. I think you know what I'm talking about, but so I got some questions for him. But man, I just think that it's so awesome. Like I said, one Cub fan to another, man. I appreciate all that you do. The great content out there that you put out there and everything, like I said, that you have done just for the team that we love, man. So, and I appreciate you for coming on.
Oh, anytime. And, I realized that I'm very blessed and when I kind of started on the whole social media thing, it was just kind of like, where's some place that I just wanted to get people to have a grasp of what life is like, just being a fan, right?
Sure.
Walking up to Wrigley Field, seeing the flags, going to CubsCon, going to spring training, going to Cooperstown, just kind of just what's it like? And sometimes I feel like, and I'm guilty of it too, just getting so into the social media and wrapping up into all this stuff. But sometimes it's just living it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have to be recording I'm weird. Like you do not want to go to the postseason game with me because I get superstitious. I get locked in, I'm just like, no, put the phones away. Like I just be in the moment, man.
Yeah.
It's okay just to live it, to be a fan and to enjoy it, because that's the beauty is I've gotten to meet so many amazing people from my travels, my journeys, my experiences. And so, it's just truly been an honor. And I just love Cub fans. And it's like, I'm an old guy now. I grew up without social media. And so it's kind of like the person that I am on social media is the same exact person that you'll see at a Cubs game.
Yeah.
I'm me. I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm me. That's all I can be. And if you see me out at the park, say hey, and I'll say hey back, and we'll talk Cubs, and we'll drink an old style and have some fun. And that's what I love doing, man. More than anything is just, when opening day comes up in about a week, just to be able to walk up and be back at the friendly confines and see old friends and see the employees and see the team. Like, that's just like, I have a little tear in my eye every time. And again, I've been doing this 26 straight times. It never gets old for me. I love it. It reinvigorates my blood. We know spring is coming. And so, an honor to talk to you and a blast to talk to your listeners. And I'm glad I was able to come out tonight.
Absolutely, man. As for me, and I've shared this with a lot of the listeners before, but just sharing it with you too. There's no better place to go to watch baseball than Wrigley Field. I'll tell you a quick story. I have a buddy of mine, huge Cardinals fan. We go to Cubs Cardinals. Jake Arrieta's pitching this game, so I'm like, for sure the Cubs are finna kick the Cardinals' ass. And lo and behold, the game stays close right up until they take Jake out. And they put in Carl Edwards Jr. and the Cardinals put up 8 runs in an inning on the Cubs in that game. And I remember that part, and I also remember walking into the stadium, and he's draped in Cardinal stuff, and we meet one of the ushers, because this is the year after the Cubs won the World Series. We meet one of the ushers, and he's talking to us. And he's looking at me, and I'm obviously decked out in Cubs gear. He's looking at my buddy. He's like, the hell's wrong with this guy? And I'm like, hey man, look, and not everybody understands, that you got to wear the blue when you come up here, man. He's like, listen, kid, if you ever want to get chicks, invest in Cubs gear right now.
Yeah. And I remember CJ, the string bing slinger. He was, boy, those were some fun times. And I think it's going to be a fun year at Wrigley this year.
Absolutely, man. Honestly, I wouldn't mind meeting up with you and watching the game with you out in the bleachers, man. Like I said, and enjoying a couple old styles, man. Like I said, I did Cubs White Sox last year. I live about 3.5, 4 hours away. So like I said, so it's a little drive for me. So I have to plan a day, but my father still lives up in Chicago. So for me, like I said, it's a drive, but I definitely have talked with the listeners and want to do a meetup there. And then, like I said, if I can also get some other Cubs content creators up there, man, like I said, and just everybody just hang, like there's no better place than the bleachers on a beautiful Saturday afternoon at Wrigley Field, man. I have the time of my life every single time. Every single time I walk into the stadium, it's like a warm feeling comes over me. You just feel like you're at home, like you just belong, man. And it's great for Cubs fans.
Absolutely love it. And like I said, we'll try to meet up for a game. Just hit me up anytime. And Chances are I'm probably there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Well, everybody, we appreciate Crawly for coming on to Chicago Cubs Central. Crawly, where can everybody find you at? What are your socials? Where are they looking for you at?
Well, you can find me at on Crawly's Cubs on X, Blue Sky, and TikTok, and Crawly's Clubhouse on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Threads. And like you said, the Fly the W podcast with my partner, Dustin Rhodes. He does the morning shows on 670 The Score. We're always talking Cubs baseball twice a week. I got we always have some really good guests on there too. So check it out and give it a listen. It's it's really important. I think that people listen to different podcasts and get different perspectives. And I don't know. I think it's enjoyable to listen to other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Well, listen, I enjoy your content. I enjoy the podcast. I enjoy everything that you do. The Cubs memorabilia stuff is by far some of the coolest I've ever seen. And like I said, we got to have you back on again, man. I can't wait to do another show with you. Cub fans, make sure that you guys like, share, and subscribe. If this is your first time watching Chicago Cubs Central, like Crawly said, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. I got even more special guests coming this way. Crawly will be back to do more episodes with me. And we're going to have a good time, man. We're gearing up for the season, y'all. It's time. The Chicago Cubs baseball season is about to begin. Until next time, go Cubs, go. Peace.
Thank you for watching another episode of Chicago Cubs Central, the #1 spot for all Chicago Cubs content. Remember to like, share, subscribe for more Cubs content.